I arrived at my sister Amanda's lavish wedding excited to celebrate. Upon checking the seating chart, my name wasn't listed. A staff member directed me to a small table in the hallway next to trash cans. When I confronted Amanda about this humiliation, she smirked coldly. "Guess you don't count as real family anymore." Shocked by her cruelty, I retrieved my expensive gift, stood up, and walked out silently. Minutes later, a scream erupted from the reception. Amanda had gone completely pale. Growing up in Lakefield, Michigan, Amanda and I were inseparable. Only 2 years apart, we shared everything from secrets to dreams. She was the brainy one with perfect grades, while I was the creative problem solver who could fix anything. Our modest upbringing taught us to value family above all else. Our parents worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table, and we learned early on to support each other through tough times. I still remember the summer nights when we'd sit on our rickety porch swing, planning our futures under star-filled skies. Amanda would talk about becoming a powerful attorney, fighting for justice in dramatic courtroom battles. I'd share my dreams of building a financial consulting business that would help everyday people. We'd pinky promise to always be there for each other, no matter how our paths might diverge. Everything changed when Amanda got accepted to Baldwin Law School on partial scholarship. Our parents scraped together what they could, but it wasn't enough. I had just started making decent money at my first real job after college, so I emptied my savings account to cover her first semester. "You'd do the same for me," I told her, and I believed it completely. At law school, Amanda met Jack Westfield, heir to a legal dynasty with connections throughout the state. Their relationship moved quickly, and with each visit home, I noticed subtle changes in my sister. Her thrift store clothes were replaced by designer labels. Her speech incorporated new phrases and references I didn't understand. She began correcting my table manners when we went out for dinner. "It's just part of moving up in the world, Hamish," she'd explain with a condescending smile whenever I called her out. "You wouldn't understand because you've chosen to stay comfortable." Still, I remained supportive. When she called at midnight crying about failing a crucial exam, I drove 3 hours to her campus, bringing her favorite comfort foods and helping her study until dawn. When Jack temporarily broke up with her during their second year, I let her crash at my apartment for 2 weeks, listening to her heartbreak and reassuring her of her worth beyond any relationship. As her relationship with Jack rekindled and grew more serious, Amanda's visits home became rarer. She'd make excuses about workload, internship obligations, or events with Jack's family. Our parents noticed but said nothing, not wanting to seem unsupportive of her success. When the wedding invitation finally arrived, I was surprised to see I wasn't included in the wedding party. Amanda explained that Jack's family insisted on a balanced wedding party, meaning his 4 groomsmen required exactly 4 bridesmaids from her side. Since I was her only brother, I unfortunately didn't make the cut. I accepted this with grace, still excited to celebrate her special day. I spent weeks searching for the perfect gift, ultimately deciding on our grandfather's vintage Swiss watch. He had left it to me in his will, but Amanda had always admired it. I thought it would be meaningful, connecting her new life with our shared past. The week before the wedding, I tried calling Amanda several times to confirm details, but she rarely answered. When she did, conversations were rushed and impatient. I chalked it up to pre-wedding stress. 2 days before the ceremony, I ran into my old high school friend Tyler at the local grocery store. He mentioned attending a lavish bachelorette party for Amanda and Jack at a vineyard the previous weekend. "It was incredible, man. Open bar, gourmet food, overnight stays for everyone," he gushed. I stood frozen in the produce aisle, apple in hand. I hadn't even known about this event, let alone been invited. That evening, I called our youngest sister Grace, who confirmed my growing suspicion. Amanda had been systematically excluding me from all pre-wedding festivities. Worse, she'd been telling her new friends that I was troubled and unstable to explain my absence. "She told Stacy you had anger issues and couldn't be trusted in social situations," Grace said quietly. I confronted her about it, but she said I was being dramatic. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The sister I'd supported unconditionally for years had been actively erasing me from her narrative, replacing our shared history with fabricated concerns about my character. Despite this painful revelation, I still planned to attend her wedding. Family was family, after all, and I hoped we could sort things out after the celebration. How terribly wrong I was. The morning of Amanda's wedding dawned bright and clear. I woke up early, carefully pressed my new suit, and polished my shoes to a military-grade shine. The ceremony wasn't until 4 in the afternoon, but I had promised to arrive early to help with any last-minute preparations. The elegant invitation specified the Lakeshore Grand Hotel, a recently renovated historical landmark that catered exclusively to luxury events. The drive there took 45 minutes, giving me plenty of time to rehearse what I might say to Amanda. I wanted to clear the air about the pre-wedding exclusions without causing drama on her special day. The grandfather's watch sat in a hand-carved wooden box on the passenger seat, wrapped in silver paper with a simple blue ribbon. The hotel was even more impressive up close. Limestone facade gleaming in the spring sunlight, valets in crisp uniforms managing a fleet of luxury vehicles, and cascades of white orchids framing the entrance. As I pulled up, I noted that my 5-year-old Toyota looked distinctly out of place among the Mercedes and BMWs. "Name for valet, sir?" asked a young attendant. "Hamish Carter. I'm the bride's brother." Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Surprise? Before his professional mask slipped back into place. He handed me a ticket and directed me to the Magnolia Ballroom on the 3rd floor. The elevator was mirrored, giving me one final chance to check my appearance. I adjusted my tie, patted down a stray hair, and practiced my most genuine smile. Whatever tension existed between Amanda and me, today was about celebrating her happiness. The Magnolia Ballroom had been transformed into a wonderland of crystal, silver, and white roses. A 12-piece orchestra was setting up in one corner, while florists made final adjustments to elaborate centerpieces. I spotted Amanda's future mother-in-law, Catherine Westfield, directing staff with military precision. She glanced up as I approached but gave no indication of recognition. "Excuse me," I said. "I'm Hamish, Amanda's brother. I'm here to help with anything that needs doing." Catherine's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, you're Hamish." She looked me over with clinical detachment. "Amanda didn't mention you would be arriving early. She asked me to help out." I lied, trying to maintain my dignity. "Is there anything specific I can do?" "I think we have everything well in hand," she replied coolly. "The wedding party is getting ready in the private suites. Perhaps you should just take a seat and stay out of the way." Before I could respond, a familiar voice called out, "Hamish!" I turned to see Grace rushing toward me, looking beautiful in a pale blue bridesmaid dress. At 19, she was the baby of our family, still in college, and thankfully unspoiled by the pretension that had infected Amanda. "I'm so glad you're here early," she said, hugging me tightly. "It's been weird, really weird." "What do you mean?" She lowered her voice, glancing around. "Amanda's been acting strange all morning, super tense. And when your name came up, she changed the subject immediately." A server passed by with a tray of champagne flutes, and Grace snagged 2, handing one to me. "Come on, let's step outside for a minute." We found a quiet spot on a balcony overlooking the hotel gardens. Below, photographers were setting up for the ceremony, arranging chairs and testing the lighting. "I heard some things," Grace said, leaning against the railing. "Amanda and Stacy were talking in the bridal suite when they thought I was in the bathroom. They mentioned something about a hallway seat and laughed about it. Then Stacy said, 'Are you sure this prank isn't going too far?' And Amanda just said, 'He deserves it after what he did.'" "What I did? What does she think I did?" Grace shook her head. "I have no idea, but Jack's family is weird about status, really obsessed with appearances. Amanda seems desperate to impress them, and somehow you've become inconvenient." I drained my champagne, trying to process this information. "Should I just leave before the ceremony starts?" "No," Grace said firmly. "You belong here. You're family. More importantly, you've done nothing wrong. Whatever game Amanda's playing, don't let her win by disappearing." We were interrupted by the arrival of Jack's Uncle Frank, a short, barrel-chested man with a shock of white hair and surprisingly kind eyes. I recognized him from photos Amanda had shared. Unlike the rest of the Westfields, he had built his fortune from scratch rather than inheriting it. "You must be Hamish," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard interesting things about you." I braced myself, but his firm handshake and direct gaze seemed genuine. "All good things, I hope," I replied cautiously. "Mixed reviews," he said with a wry smile. "But I've learned to form my own opinions. Jack speaks highly of you." This surprised me. I'd only met Jack a handful of times, and our interactions had been cordial but distant. "That's good to hear. I don't know him well, but he seems to make my sister happy." Frank's expression shifted slightly. "Does he? Interesting." He glanced at his watch. "The ceremony starts soon. I should find my seat. Perhaps we can talk more at the reception." As he walked away, Grace squeezed my arm. "I need to get back to the bridal party. Will you be okay?" "Of course," I assured her. "It's just a wedding. What's the worst that could happen?" I spent the next hour helping elderly relatives find their seats for the ceremony, making small talk with distant cousins, and avoiding Catherine Westfield's disapproving glare. As guests began arriving in earnest, I noticed something odd. People I'd never met were looking at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to pity to barely concealed amusement. A couple of Jack's friends nudged each other when I passed, whispering behind their hands. The growing suspicion that I was the subject of some ongoing joke made my stomach clench, but I maintained my composure. This was Amanda's day, and I wouldn't be the one to disrupt it. Just before the ceremony, I slipped into the back row of chairs in the garden. The setting was breathtaking. White rose petals carpeting the aisle, a canopied altar framed by the lake beyond, string quartet playing softly as guests were seated. Our parents were escorted to the front row, Mom dabbing at her eyes already. When Amanda appeared at the end of the aisle on our father's arm, my breath caught. She looked radiant in an intricately beaded gown that must have cost more than a year of my salary. Despite everything, pride swelled in my chest. My little sister, the determined girl who had studied by flashlight during power outages, was marrying into a life of security and privilege. The ceremony was brief but lovely. Amanda and Jack exchanged personalized vows that prompted both laughter and tears from the guests. When they were pronounced husband and wife, everyone erupted in applause. I clapped until my palms hurt, genuinely happy for her in that moment. As guests began moving toward the reception hall, I lingered in the garden, gathering my thoughts. The gift box felt heavy in my pocket. Despite the weirdness Grace had described, despite the strange looks and whispers, surely the reception would be a chance to reconnect with my sister properly. I couldn't have been more wrong. The reception was scheduled to begin with a cocktail hour, followed by dinner and dancing in the grand ballroom. A crowd had already formed around the seating chart displayed on an ornate gilt easel. I waited patiently for my turn to find my table assignment, rehearsing a congratulatory message for Amanda and Jack. When the crowd thinned, I stepped forward and scanned the alphabetically arranged cards. Carter, Carter. My parents were at table 1, the head table. Grace was listed at table 2. But my name wasn't there. I checked again, methodically moving through every card. Nothing. "Excuse me," I said to a nearby staff member. "I can't seem to find my name on the seating chart. I'm Hamish Carter, the bride's brother." The young woman consulted her tablet, scrolling through what appeared to be a guest list. Her expression shifted from professional neutrality to uncomfortable recognition. "Ah, Mr. Carter. Yes, you have a special seating arrangement." She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "If you'll follow me." She led me not into the grand ballroom where crystal chandeliers sparkled above elegantly set tables, but through a service door and down a hallway lined with catering equipment. At the far end, partially hidden behind a decorative screen, stood a small bistro table with a single chair. It was positioned directly beside 3 large trash cans awaiting removal, the distinct odor of discarded food wafting from them. A handwritten place card reading Hamish sat beside a plastic cup and paper napkin. "There must be some mistake," I said, feeling heat rise to my face. The staff member wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, sir. The seating arrangements were approved directly by the bride. Perhaps you could speak with her? She hurried away before I could respond, leaving me standing in disbelief beside my special table. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses drifted from the ballroom, a stark contrast to the humming ice machine beside me and the occasional service staff hurrying past with barely concealed curiosity. I stood frozen, trying to process the deliberate cruelty of this arrangement. This wasn't an oversight or a last-minute accommodation. This was intentional humiliation. The gift box suddenly felt like a lead weight in my jacket pocket. What had I done to deserve this? What could possibly justify such a public insult? Taking a deep breath, I decided to confront Amanda directly. I deserved an explanation, at minimum. I walked back through the service corridor and into the ballroom, where guests were now mingling with cocktails. Amanda stood in a circle of admirers, radiant in her wedding gown, laughing at something Jack's father had said. I approached slowly, waiting for a break in the conversation. When she saw me, her smile faltered for just a moment before returning, now brittle and forced. "Hamish, you made it." Her voice was artificially bright. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" I kept my tone neutral, conscious of the curious glances from those nearby. "I'm a little busy right now, as you can see." She gestured vaguely at the reception. "It's important. About the seating arrangement." Her eyes hardened slightly. "Is there a problem?" "You know there is." I've been seated in the hallway next to the trash cans. A few of her friends exchanged glances. One poorly suppressed a laugh. "Oh, that," Amanda said dismissively. "We ran out of space in the ballroom. I'm sure you understand. The Westfields had so many important guests to accommodate." "You put me in the hallway," I repeated, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Your own brother." She leaned in, dropping her voice. "Honestly, Hamish, be grateful you're here at all. After everything you've put this family through, you're lucky I didn't have you turned away at the door." I stared at her, genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? What have I supposedly done?" Her perfect smile never wavered, though her eyes remained cold. "Playing innocent doesn't suit you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have guests to attend to, important people. Guess you don't count as real family anymore." The casual cruelty of her words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't my sister. This was a stranger wearing her face. In that moment, I made my decision. Without another word, I turned and walked back to the hallway table. I picked up the place card with my name, folded it carefully, and placed it in my pocket. Then I took out the gift box, looked at it one last time, and returned it to my jacket. With quiet dignity, I walked back through the ballroom, past clusters of laughing guests, past my confused parents who tried to wave me over, past Grace whose eyes widened in alarm. I walked straight to the exit, never breaking stride. In the grand foyer, I nearly collided with Frank Westfield, who was returning from what appeared to be a phone call. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. "I wasn't welcome," I said simply. Amanda made that quite clear. His eyes narrowed. "What happened?" Briefly, I explained the hallway seating and Amanda's response. Frank's expression darkened. "That's unacceptable. Let me speak to her." "Please don't," I said. "It would only create more drama. This is her day, a day she'll regret, I suspect." He handed me his business card. "I'd like to continue our conversation sometime. I have a feeling there's more to this story than meets the eye." I pocketed the card and continued to the valet stand. As I waited for my car, I heard a commotion from inside, raised voices, then what sounded like a scream. I didn't turn back. Whatever was happening, it was no longer my concern. The valet brought my car, and I slipped him a $20 tip, extravagant for my budget but somehow satisfying in the moment. As I drove away from the Lakeshore Grand, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: humiliation, anger, grief, but also, surprisingly, relief. The sister I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. Acknowledging that truth was oddly liberating. I had just turned onto the highway when my phone began buzzing with texts and calls. I ignored them all and kept driving, unsure of my destination but certain I was heading away from pain and toward something new. I ended up at Lakeside Park, a quiet spot where Amanda and I had spent countless summer days as children. The spring evening was turning cool, but I sat on a bench overlooking the water anyway, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone continued to vibrate in my pocket. 12 missed calls and 27 text messages in the hour since I'd left the wedding. Finally, I checked the texts. Most were from Grace. "Where are you?" "Amanda is freaking out. Something happened with Jack's uncle. Call me as soon as possible." My parents had each left voicemails, their tones starkly different. Mom sounded worried and confused. Dad sounded angry, though whether at me or Amanda wasn't clear. I was about to call Grace when my phone rang again. It was her. "Hamish. Thank God. Where are you?" "At the park by the lake. What's going on?" "Everything exploded after you left. Uncle Frank confronted Jack about your seating arrangement, which apparently Jack knew nothing about. Then he announced to everyone nearby that he was reconsidering his investment position, given the character demonstrated today." Amanda freaked out completely. "Investment position?" "Yeah, turns out Frank is the main financial backer for the law firm where Amanda and Jack are supposed to start working after the honeymoon." Amanda literally screamed when she found out who he was. Then she started blaming Stacy for the seating idea, which Stacy denied. "It's a total mess." I absorbed this information silently. Karma had been swift, but I took no pleasure in it. "I'm coming to find you," Grace said. "Don't move." 20 minutes later, her boyfriend's car pulled into the parking lot. Grace rushed over and enveloped me in a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I had no idea it would be that bad. I knew something was off, but not that." We sat on the bench together, the evening growing darker around us. "Why?" I asked finally. "What did I supposedly do that justified treating me like garbage?" Grace looked uncomfortable. "She's been telling people different stories. To the Westfields, she said you had addiction problems and couldn't be trusted around an open bar. To her law school friends, she hinted that you had inappropriate boundaries and made her uncomfortable. To Stacy and the bridesmaids, she said you'd stolen money from our parents and were only coming to the wedding to ask for more." Each fabrication felt like another knife in my back. None of that is remotely true. I know that. Mom and Dad know that. But Amanda's been so determined to present herself as someone who overcame a difficult background. She needed villains in her origin story. You became the main one. We were interrupted by my phone ringing again. Our parents. "We need to go to their house," Grace said. "They're trying to figure out what's happening. Amanda and Jack are there too." The thought of facing Amanda again so soon made my stomach clench, but I nodded. This confrontation was inevitable. Our parents' modest two-story home looked exactly as it always had. The porch swing where Amanda and I had shared our dreams, still hanging slightly crooked, Mom's flower beds neat but not showy, Dad's ancient Buick in the driveway. It felt surreal to be returning here directly from the opulent fantasy world of Amanda's wedding. Inside, voices were already raised. In the living room, Amanda, still in her wedding gown, though now with mascara streaked down her face, was gesturing wildly. Jack sat stiffly beside her on the sofa. Our parents stood near the fireplace, looking shell-shocked. Everyone fell silent when Grace and I entered. "Hamish," Mom started, stepping forward. "What happened? Why did you leave the wedding?" Before I could answer, Amanda jumped in. "He made a scene. He embarrassed me in front of everyone because he wasn't seated at the head table. It was completely selfish." "That's not what happened," I said quietly. "Tell them where I was seated, Amanda." We had limited space in the ballroom. I was put at a small table in the service hallway next to the trash cans. I interrupted, looking directly at our parents. My place setting was a paper napkin and a plastic cup. Every other guest was in the ballroom at proper tables. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Dad's expression darkened. "That can't be right," he said. "Ask any of the staff," I replied. "Ask Grace." When I confronted Amanda, she told me I should be grateful to be invited at all, and that I don't count as real family anymore. All eyes turned to Amanda, who suddenly seemed to deflate. "It wasn't my idea," she said weakly. Stacy thought. "Stop lying," Grace cut in. "I heard you and Stacy talking about the hallway seat prank this morning. You were laughing about it. Amanda's expression hardened. Fine. Yes, I put Hamish in the hallway. He deserved it after trying to sabotage my relationship with Jack. What are you talking about? I demanded. I've never done anything to sabotage your relationship. You told Jack's family I came from nothing, that our family was poor and struggled to make ends meet. A confused silence filled the room. Amanda, Jack said carefully. Hamish never spoke to my family before today. You're the one who told me about your background, which I've never had any problem with. But Uncle Frank said. Uncle Frank did his own research when we announced our engagement. He researches everyone he might potentially do business with. That's just who he is. Amanda looked stricken. So Hamish didn't. I didn't do anything except support you, I said. I paid for your first semester of law school. I drove 3 hours to help you study when you were failing corporate law. I let you live with me for 2 weeks, when Jack broke up with you second year. Our parents looked between us, confusion evident. Amanda, Mom said slowly, have you been lying about Hamish? The room grew painfully quiet. Finally, Amanda spoke, her voice small. I had to distance myself from my past to fit in with Jack's world. The Westfields are so polished, so perfect. My background, our background, felt embarrassing by comparison. So you invented stories about me having addiction problems? About me stealing from our parents? I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. You told people what? Dad's voice rose sharply. Amanda began to cry in earnest now. I'm sorry. It got out of hand. One small lie led to another, and soon I couldn't take any of it back without looking like a complete fraud. You are a complete fraud, I said quietly. The sister I knew would never have done this. Jack stood up suddenly. I think Amanda and I need some time to talk privately. His expression was carefully controlled, but I could see the tension in his jaw. This isn't what I signed up for. They left for the kitchen, their hushed but intense conversation, audible but not intelligible. My parents approached me, apologies and confusion mingling in their expressions. We talked for over an hour, about Amanda's gradual transformation, about the stories she'd apparently been telling, about the wedding debacle. Grievances and misunderstandings from the past few years emerged, painting a picture of a sister who had systematically erased her past and reshaped it into something she found more palatable for her new life. Later, as Grace drove me back to my apartment, I felt emotionally drained but somehow lighter. The truth was painful, but it was out now. What will you do? She asked, as we pulled up to my building. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. But whatever happens next, at least it will be based on truth, not lies. What I didn't know then was that Amanda's web of deception was about to have consequences far beyond our family relationships. Consequences that would affect my career, my reputation, and ultimately, the course of all our lives. Monday morning arrived with the harsh buzz of my alarm at 6:30. For a moment, I considered calling in sick. The emotional exhaustion of the weekend sat heavy on my shoulders, and the thought of putting on a professional face seemed nearly impossible. But 5 years at Preston Financial Partners had taught me the value of showing up, especially when it was difficult. I'd spent Sunday ignoring calls from Amanda and fielding concerned check-ins from our parents. No one had heard from Jack since he and Amanda had left our parents' house. According to Mom, Amanda had moved temporarily into their guest room, refusing to discuss what had happened after they left. The Preston Financial offices occupied 3 floors of a sleek downtown building. As the elevator doors opened on the 22nd floor, I straightened my tie and tried to push family drama from my mind. I had client meetings scheduled and portfolio reviews to complete, real-world responsibilities that wouldn't wait for personal crises to resolve. I had just settled at my desk when my assistant Diane appeared in the doorway, her expression concerned. Hamish, Marcus wants to see you in the conference room. Right now. Marcus Preston was the founding partner, and not someone who made casual requests. A meeting without advance notice, first thing Monday morning, was unusual. Did he say what it's about? Diane shook her head. No, but the executive team is there. And legal. My stomach dropped. In the 5 years I'd worked at Preston, I'd never been called to a meeting with legal present. The main conference room was ominously quiet when I entered. Marcus sat at the head of the table, flanked by our COO and general counsel. 3 other partners occupied chairs along one side. Hamish. Marcus nodded toward an empty chair. Please, sit down. I complied, mind racing through possibilities. Had I made a serious error on a client account? Violated some compliance regulation? Nothing came to mind. We've received a concerning call, Marcus began, his tone carefully neutral, from Gerald Westfield. The name hit me like a bucket of ice water. Gerald Westfield, Jack's father, senior partner at Westfield, Bronson, and Taylor, and one of the most influential attorneys in the state. Gerald reached out to me personally this morning, Marcus continued. He expressed serious concerns about your involvement in the Atkinson merger. The Atkinson merger was our biggest current project, a $50 million deal I'd been working on for months. The Atkinson family was selling their third-generation manufacturing business, and I'd helped structure the financial aspects of the acquisition. What concerns? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Our general counsel, Sandra, slid a folder across the table. Mr. Westfield alleges that you have personal issues that compromise your professional judgment. Specifically, he claims you have a history of financial impropriety and substance abuse issues that make you unsuitable for handling sensitive client matters. I felt the blood drain from my face. Amanda's lies had followed me to work. That's completely false, I said. All of it. I've never had substance abuse issues, and I've certainly never engaged in financial impropriety. Marcus's expression remained impassive. Gerald Westfield is not someone who makes accusations lightly. He indicated these concerns came from a family member with direct knowledge. My sister, I said flatly, who just married his son. A ripple of surprise crossed several faces. You're related to the Westfields? Our COO asked. As of Saturday, by marriage only. And therein lies the problem. I took a deep breath and gave them the condensed version of the weekend's events, from the hallway seating to the confrontation at my parents' house. I explained Amanda's fabricated stories and her apparent motivations. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. This is not what I expected, Marcus said finally. But Gerald Westfield has considerable influence. The Atkinsons specifically requested that his firm handle the legal aspects of the merger. If he pushes them to question your involvement, we could lose the entire deal, Sandra finished. Based on complete lies, I pointed out, frustration rising. I've never given anyone at this firm reason to doubt my character or competence. No, you haven't, Marcus agreed. Your work has been exemplary, but perception matters in this business, and right now, the perception from a very influential corner is problematic. So what happens now? I asked, the unfairness of the situation making my voice tight. Marcus exchanged glances with the other executives. We need to consider our options. In the meantime, we think it's best if you step back from client-facing work on the Atkinson deal. It wasn't quite a suspension, but it felt like one. I nodded stiffly and stood to leave, anger and humiliation burning in my chest. Hamish, Marcus called as I reached the door. For what it's worth, I believe your version of events, but we need to handle this carefully. I spent the rest of the morning in my office with the door closed, alternating between fury and disbelief. Amanda's lies weren't just hurting family relationships anymore, they were threatening my career. I'd worked incredibly hard to build my reputation at Preston, putting in countless late nights and weekends, exceeding every performance metric. The thought of losing it all because of my sister's insecurities was unbearable. Around 11, Diane knocked softly on my door. There's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's quite insistent. I glanced up, expecting perhaps my father or even Jack. Instead, Frank Westfield stood in my doorway, his compact frame somehow filling the space. Mr. Westfield, I said, rising quickly. This is unexpected. Frank, please. And I apologize for the intrusion. He entered without waiting for an invitation, taking a seat across from my desk. I understand my brother has been making waves. I hesitated, unsure how much to say to Jack's uncle, regardless of how sympathetic he had seemed at the wedding. Frank waved a hand dismissively. Don't worry about being diplomatic. Gerald and I have different approaches to, well, everything. Always have. May I ask what he's accused you of? Cautiously, I outlined the morning's meeting and the allegations raised. Frank's expression darkened. I see my niece's creativity extends beyond wedding seating arrangements. He leaned forward. Hamish, I owe you an apology. If I hadn't made such a scene at the wedding, Gerald might not have felt the need to retaliate. You have nothing to apologize for. You were the only one who stood up for me. Perhaps, but I could have handled it more discreetly. He straightened his tie thoughtfully. The question now is how to fix this mess. Before I could respond, my office phone rang. It was Marcus's assistant, requesting my immediate presence in the executive boardroom. It seems the situation is developing, I told Frank. I'm being summoned upstairs. Perfect timing, Frank said, rising. I'll join you. That might not be appropriate. Trust me, son. In situations like this, having the right allies matters more than protocol. The executive boardroom was Preston Financial's most impressive space. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. A massive mahogany table gleaming under recessed lighting. When Frank and I entered, the assembled executives fell silent in surprise. Marcus recovered first. Mr. Westfield, we weren't expecting you. Frank, please. And I apologize for the interruption, but when I heard about my brother's call this morning, I felt compelled to intervene. He surveyed the room with the calm confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. I understand Gerald has raised concerns about Hamish's involvement in the Atkinson merger. Marcus nodded cautiously. He expressed some reservations, yes, based on information from my new niece-in-law, no doubt. Frank settled into an empty chair. Information that is, to put it bluntly, entirely fabricated. We've heard Hamish's side of the story, our COO interjected. But the Westfield firm's involvement with the Atkinsons complicates matters. The Westfield firm, Frank said carefully, is not a monolith. My brother may be the figurehead, but I am the primary investor. Have been since I helped him expand 15 years ago. He turned to me. What Hamish may not know is that I've been concerned about certain practices at the firm for some time. Practices that involve the junior associates Jack has been bringing on board, including his new wife. The room grew very still. What sort of practices? Sandra asked, her legal mind clearly engaging. Nothing definitively unethical, yet. But there's a pattern of client development techniques that skirt the boundaries of proper disclosure and conflict of interest. Frank's expression was grave. I was already investigating when the wedding incident occurred. Hamish's treatment struck me as symptomatic of a larger character issue within that particular circle. How we treat those we believe can't benefit us reveals more than how we treat those we wish to impress. Marcus leaned forward. Are you suggesting that Gerald's call this morning was a preemptive strike? Frank finished. He likely assumes I spoke to Hamish at the wedding and revealed my concerns. This would be his way of discrediting any potential whistleblower. I sat in stunned silence. The situation had escalated far beyond family drama into potential professional misconduct. Frank turned to me. I want to be clear, Hamish. I have no evidence that your sister is directly involved in anything improper, but she's aligned herself with people I no longer trust, and her willingness to fabricate harmful stories about her own brother suggests a troubling lack of ethical boundaries. The meeting continued for another hour, with Frank providing more context about his concerns regarding the Westfield firm. By the end, not only was I fully reinstated on the Atkinson deal, but Marcus was considering transferring all of Preston Financial's business away from Westfield, Bronson, and Taylor. As Frank and I walked to the elevators afterward, I struggled to process everything that had happened. Why are you helping me? I asked finally. You barely know me. Frank smiled slightly. I know enough. I've spent 40 years in business developing a good sense for character. You have it. My nephew, despite his advantages, does not. Nor does his new wife, it seems. She wasn't always like this, I said quietly. Few people are born calculating, Frank agreed. But the choices we make shape us, one compromise at a time. The elevator arrived, and he stepped inside. Speaking of choices, I have a proposition for you. Not today, you have enough to process, but soon. My card has my personal number. Call me when things settle down." As the doors closed between us, I realized the day had transformed my situation entirely. The threat to my career had been neutralized, but the revelation about potential issues at Jack and Amanda's firm opened new questions. What exactly had my sister gotten herself involved in? And what proposition did Frank Westfield have in mind? I returned to my office, mind racing with possibilities. Whatever came next, one thing was clear. The fallout from Amanda's wedding was far from over. 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and awkward family dynamics. The Atkinson merger moved forward successfully, with Frank Westfield personally recommending an alternative law firm to handle the legal aspects. My position at Preston Financial was not only secure but enhanced by Frank's obvious approval. Amanda remained at our parents' house, while Jack had reportedly moved temporarily into a hotel. Neither was taking calls from the other, according to Grace, who had appointed herself family communication coordinator. Our parents were walking on eggshells, trying to support Amanda while also rebuilding their relationship with me. I had maintained a careful distance from the entire situation, focusing on work and declining invitations to family dinners. The wound of Amanda's betrayal was still too fresh, the public humiliation too recent. But by the 3rd week, avoidance no longer seemed sustainable. Frank Westfield had called twice, hinting at information I needed to hear about Amanda's situation. Grace was sending increasingly urgent texts about family intervention. Even Marcus had gently suggested that unresolved personal matters could eventually affect my professional performance. So on a rainy Wednesday afternoon, I finally called Frank and agreed to meet at his office downtown. Unlike the imposing Westfield firm headquarters, Frank's personal office was in a converted industrial space, exposed brick walls, polished concrete floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. His assistant, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, showed me directly to his private office. Frank greeted me with a firm handshake. "Hamish, good to see you. Coffee?" I accepted, and we settled into comfortable leather chairs near the windows. "I've been gathering information," Frank said without preamble, "about the situation at my brother's firm, specifically involving Jack's team. And Amanda," I added. "Yes, though her role appears to be more peripheral than I initially feared." He slid a folder across the small table between us. "What I've found is a pattern of aggressive client development practices. Not quite illegal, but certainly unethical by industry standards." I opened the folder to find printouts of emails, financial reports, and what appeared to be internal memos. "Jack has been leading a team of junior associates in targeting potential clients who are already represented by competing firms," Frank explained. "They've been using privileged information obtained through social connections to identify vulnerabilities in existing attorney-client relationships." "Is that illegal?" I asked, scanning the documents. "Not explicitly, but it violates American Bar Association ethical guidelines and could result in sanctions. More importantly, it creates a culture of corner-cutting that inevitably leads to more serious breaches." Frank's expression was grave. "I've invested in my brother's firm for decades, but I won't be associated with this approach to business. I've already begun divesting." "What does this have to do with Amanda?" Frank leaned back in his chair. "Your sister appears to have been recruited specifically because of her eagerness to prove herself and her lack of existing connections in the legal community. She's been tasked with socializing with the spouses and family members of potential clients, gathering information that Jack's team can use." The realization hit me. That's why she was so desperate to distance herself from our family. She was creating a new persona that would appeal to these social circles. Precisely. And when you remained a link to her actual background, you became inconvenient to the narrative. I sat with this information, trying to process its implications for Amanda. "There's more," Frank said quietly. "The firm partnership vote happens next month. Gerald promised Jack and Amanda early partnership tracks when they joined. But in light of my investigation and subsequent divestment, those promises are now in jeopardy. How much trouble are they in? Professionally, they could face ethics committee reviews, possibly even suspension of their licenses in the worst case. Financially, the partnership would have doubled their current salaries and provided profit sharing. Without it, They're facing a significant lifestyle adjustment, especially given the wedding expenses and the house they've purchased. I thought about the elaborate wedding, the luxury venue, the dozens of important guests. How much had Amanda and Jack overextended themselves based on promises of partnership and prosperity? "What are you planning to do?" I asked. "That depends partly on you," Frank replied. "I've already spoken with my brother. Gerald knows I'm aware of the ethical issues and that I'm withdrawing my investment. What he doesn't know is whether I plan to make formal complaints to the Bar Association." "And do you?" Frank studied me for a moment. "I believe in consequences, Hamish. But I also believe in second chances when there's potential for genuine change. Jack is my nephew, despite his poor choices. And Amanda is your sister." I understood then what he was suggesting. "You want me to confront her with this information, to give her a chance to course correct before formal complaints are filed. I want you to decide what would be most constructive. Revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, but it rarely builds anything worthwhile." I left Frank's office with the folder of evidence and a heavy sense of responsibility. What Amanda had done to me was deeply personal and hurtful. But did I want to be instrumental in the potential destruction of her career? Would that bring any real resolution, or just perpetuate the cycle of harm? After a restless night of contemplation, I made my decision. The next morning, I called Amanda directly for the first time since the wedding. "Hamish." Her voice was small and uncertain. "I didn't expect to hear from you. We need to talk. Not at Mom and Dad's, somewhere neutral." A hesitation. "Okay, where?" "The coffee shop near your office. Noon today." She agreed without argument, which itself indicated how much had changed. The pre-wedding Amanda would have insisted on choosing the location, the time, controlling every aspect of the interaction. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch rush when I arrived. I selected a table in the back corner, away from the main traffic flow, and ordered a black coffee. Amanda arrived precisely at noon, looking significantly different from the radiant bride of 3 weeks prior. Her designer clothing had been replaced by a simple blouse and slacks. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked younger, more vulnerable, and startlingly similar to the sister I'd grown up with. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." "I was the one who called you," I pointed out. "Still, after everything, I wouldn't have blamed you for cutting me off completely." She looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. "I'm so sorry, Hamish. What I did was unforgivable." I studied her, trying to gauge the sincerity of her apology. "Why did you do it?" "Really?" She was quiet for a long moment. "It started small. When I first met Jack's family, I was intimidated by their wealth, their connections. I wanted to fit in, so I polished my background a little, made our family sound more established than we were." "That's understandable," I said. "But how did you get from that to telling people I had addiction problems and stole from our parents?" Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "Jack's father started asking specific questions about my family. He made it clear that they were investigating my background before welcoming me into their family. I panicked. I knew they wouldn't find anything negative about me. I've always been the perfect one. But you." "I've never been in trouble either," I said flatly. "I know. But you're more real. More yourself. You don't care about impressing people or fitting into someone else's idea of success. I was afraid they'd see that and somehow use it against me." She wiped a tear away. "So I created a narrative where I was the responsible one who had overcome a difficult family situation. It was easier than admitting I was ashamed of not coming from money. And the wedding seating?" She looked down. "That was after Jack's father started raising concerns about partnership. He suggested the wedding was a test of our social acumen, our ability to manage important relationships. I was terrified of anything going wrong, and Stacy suggested, God, it sounds so horrible now. She suggested creating a controlled disruption, something that would show Jack's family how well we could handle problems, by humiliating me. Yes." Her voice broke. "I convinced myself you would understand somehow that it was just one day, that my entire future was at stake. But when I saw your face, I knew I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. I took out Frank's folder and placed it on the table between us. "Do you know what this is?" She shook her head. "Evidence of ethical violations at Westfield, Bronson, and Taylor, specifically involving Jack's team and their client acquisition methods." The color drained from Amanda's face. "Where did you get that?" "Frank Westfield, Jack's uncle, the one who confronted you at the wedding. Is he going to file a complaint with the Bar Association?" "That depends." "On what?" "On you. On whether you're willing to make real changes, not just apologize when you're caught." Amanda stared at the folder, then back at me. "What do you want me to do?" "First, tell Jack the truth. All of it. About your background, about the lies you've told, about using me as a scapegoat. Then, both of you need to decide what kind of lawyers, what kind of people you want to be. Frank is willing to help you transition to a firm with better ethical standards, but only if you commit to actual change. And if we don't, then he files formal complaints, and your careers are potentially over before they've really begun." Amanda's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the folder. "Can I take this to show Jack?" I nodded. "Frank has copies." She gathered her things to leave, then paused. "Why are you doing this, Hamish? After what I did to you, why help me at all?" I considered the question carefully, because I remember the sister who used to share her dreams with me on the porch swing, because despite everything, I believe that person still exists somewhere inside you, and because continuing the cycle of hurt won't heal either of us. Amanda's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't deserve a brother like you." "No," I agreed, "you don't. Not yet. But maybe someday you will." As she left, I felt a strange mixture of emotions, lingering hurt, cautious hope, and an unexpected sense of peace. I had given Amanda a chance at redemption not because she deserved it, but because offering it was the right thing to do. Whatever she chose to do with that chance would reveal who she truly was, beyond the facades and fabrications. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly everything would unfold after that meeting, or how completely all our lives would be transformed by the choices made in the coming days. 3 months passed, bringing with them a summer of profound change. The confrontation at the coffee shop had set in motion a series of events that reshaped all our lives in ways I could never have predicted. The day after our meeting, Amanda showed the folder to Jack. According to Grace, their conversation lasted through the night. Tears, recriminations, hard truths, finally spoken aloud. By morning, they had made a decision that shocked everyone. They would both resign from Westfield, Bronson, and Taylor. Jack called his Uncle Frank directly, admitting his involvement in the unethical practices and expressing genuine remorse. Amanda reached out to our parents, confessing everything, not just about the wedding, but about all the lies she had told over the years. She even called a handful of mutual friends to correct the false narratives she had spread about me. The changes weren't just professional. Amanda and Jack sold their expensive house, moving into a modest apartment while they reassessed their priorities. They postponed their honeymoon indefinitely, using the refunded deposits to start repaying the wedding costs. Meanwhile, Frank Westfield made good on his promise. Rather than filing formal complaints, he helped Jack and Amanda find positions at a smaller, more ethically minded firm. The positions came with significant pay cuts and no partnership track, but they offered something more valuable, the chance to rebuild their careers on a foundation of integrity rather than appearance. As for me, Frank's proposition turned out to be an unexpected business opportunity. He had been impressed by my work on the Atkinson merger and by my handling of the family crisis. He offered to back me in starting my own financial consulting firm, focusing on small to medium businesses, the kind of clients who were often overlooked by larger firms like Preston. After careful consideration, I accepted. We launched Carter Financial Partners in August, with Frank as a silent partner and mentor. The work was challenging but deeply satisfying, helping family-owned businesses navigate succession planning, supporting entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, creating financial strategies that prioritized long-term stability over quick profits. My relationship with Amanda remained cautious but healing. We began with weekly phone calls, then gradually progressed to occasional dinners. The sister I remembered from childhood emerged more with each conversation, the sharp intelligence now tempered with humility, the ambition balanced by a growing sense of purpose beyond status. Which brings us to today, a crisp October evening, 3 months after the wedding disaster. Our parents had insisted on hosting a family dinner to celebrate my new business venture. As I pulled into their driveway, I noticed Amanda's car already parked out front. Inside, the atmosphere was tentatively festive. Mom had prepared all my favorite foods, and Dad had hung a hand-painted congratulations banner across the living room. Grace and her boyfriend were arranging a small pile of gifts on the coffee table. Jack stood somewhat awkwardly by the window, still finding his place in our family dynamic. And Amanda was in the dining room, setting the table. "Hamish!" Mom enveloped me in a fierce hug. "We're so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom." I returned her embrace, then greeted Dad and Grace. Amanda approached last, carrying what appeared to be place cards. "I assigned the seating," she said with a small smile. "Hope that's okay." A beat of silence. Then we both laughed, the shared joke easing some of the lingering tension between us. Dinner was surprisingly comfortable. Jack, freed from the pressure to impress, revealed a dry sense of humor I'd never seen before. My parents shared embarrassing childhood stories. Grace announced she'd been accepted to graduate school. Throughout it all, Amanda remained noticeably quiet, watching the interactions with thoughtful attention. As Mom brought out dessert, Amanda stood and tapped her glass for attention. "I'd like to say something, if that's okay." She looked at me. "Hamish, I know this dinner is supposed to be about celebrating your new business, and we are all so incredibly proud of what you're building. But I need to acknowledge something important first." She took a deep breath. 3 months ago, I was so consumed by appearances, by what other people thought, that I lost sight of what actually matters. I treated the person who had always supported me, who paid for my education, who celebrated my successes, who helped me through my failures, like he was disposable. Worse than disposable. Like he was an embarrassment. The table was completely silent now. I've spent these months trying to understand how I became someone capable of such cruelty. And I've realized that success means nothing if you sacrifice your integrity to achieve it. She gestured to the dining room around us. This, family, truth, genuine connection, this is real success. She reached under the table and produced a small box wrapped in silver paper with a blue ribbon, identical to the wedding gift I had taken back that day. I can't undo what I did at the wedding, but I can acknowledge it, learn from it, and try every day to be worthy of the second chance I've been given. She placed the box beside my plate. "This isn't the same as what I lost, but I hope it can be a new beginning." With uncertain hands, I unwrapped the gift. Inside was not the grandfather's watch I had planned to give her, but a new one, simple, elegant, and engraved on the back. "Time reveals true character. Thank you for showing me mine." I looked up to find Amanda watching me anxiously. "It's perfect," I said quietly. Later, as the evening wound down, I found myself on the front porch with Amanda, sitting on the old swing just as we had countless times growing up. The night was cool, stars visible above us in the clear autumn sky. "Do you remember when we used to plan our futures out here?" she asked. "Every detail," I replied. "You were going to be a crusading attorney, fighting for justice in dramatic courtroom battles." She laughed softly. "Reality turned out a bit different. It usually does. Are you happy, Hamish? With your new company? With how things turned out?" I considered the question carefully. I am. Not because everything is perfect. It's not. Building something from scratch is harder than I expected. But it's mine. Built on my values, helping the kind of people I care about. That matters more than I realized. "I think I'm learning that too," Amanda said. "The new firm isn't prestigious or wealthy. Most of our clients are regular people with regular problems. But the work feels clean, meaningful." She glanced at me. "Jack's changing too. You might actually like him if you gave him another chance." "I'm working on it," I promised. We fell into comfortable silence, the porch swing creaking gently as we rocked. "You know what I've been thinking about lately?" Amanda said finally. "That table in the hallway, next to the trash cans. How perfectly it symbolized what I'd become, someone willing to throw away what mattered for what impressed. Poetic justice, I agreed. Life rarely offers such perfect metaphors. She turned to face me directly. I know I've said it before, but I am truly sorry, Hamish, for all of it. I know you are, and I forgive you, not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger would only hurt both of us more. When did my little brother get so wise? She asked with a sad smile. Probably around the same time my big sister remembered who she really is. As we continued talking late into the night, I reflected on the strange journey of the past 3 months. From the public humiliation at the wedding, to the professional threat at work, from confrontation to reconciliation, all of us had been transformed in ways we couldn't have anticipated. Amanda would never again be the idolized big sister of my childhood. But perhaps she could become something more valuable. A real person, flawed but self-aware, capable of both terrible mistakes and genuine growth. Our relationship would never be perfect, but it could be authentic, built on truth rather than appearances, on mutual respect rather than obligation. Life offers few neat resolutions. Relationships damaged by betrayal don't heal overnight. Trust, once broken, rebuilds slowly through consistent actions, not dramatic gestures. But sitting there on that creaky porch swing with my sister, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again. Hope, not just for her redemption, but for all of us. Hope that we could learn from our mistakes, that we could choose better paths forward, that the hardest moments in our lives could become catalysts for the most meaningful growth. The wedding seat in the hallway had been meant as my humiliation. Instead, it became a turning point that freed me from others' expectations and opened the door to a more authentic life. Sometimes, walking away from where you're not valued is the first step toward finding where you truly belong. If you've ever faced rejection or betrayal from those who should have valued you most, I hope my story reminds you that such moments don't define your worth. They reveal the character of others, not your own. And sometimes, what begins as heartbreak can become the unexpected foundation for something far better than what you lost. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic situation to preserve your dignity? How did it change your life? Please share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, and the most powerful thing you can offer is forgiveness, even when it isn't deserved.